Nandana Raja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jayom Vishnupad Paramhamsa Parivrajacharya Asto Tarasata Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayom Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Asto Tarasata Sri Srimad Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Sikaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Adi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Mayapur Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Gaura Premanande.
Hari.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the lotus feet of Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga.
Hare.
Om Ajnanatirandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpadruvyaschа Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna. Dear devotees, today we are continuing our study of Srimad Bhagavatam. We are in the 10th canto, 13th chapter. Today's text, I believe, is 58. Yes, 58. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Tatorvak pratilabdhaksha kaparetavad uttita krichtrad unmilyavadrishtir achashtedam sahatmana. Tatorvak pratilabdhaksha kaparetavad uttita krichtrad unmilyavadrishtir achashtedam sahatmana. Tatorvak pratilabdhaksha kahparetav ad uttita krichtrad unmilyavadrishtir achashtedam sahatmana. Please chant.
Torikvak pratilabdaksha kaparatav uttita kritrad unmilya vaidrishtir achastedam sahatmana.
Tato arvak pratilabdhaksha kaparetvad uttischa krachard unmilya vaidrishtir achestedam sahatmana. Hare Krishna.
Tato pratilabdaksha kaparetavad uttita krichat Unmilya vaidristi achastedam sahatmana.
ततोर्वाक्प्रतिलाभक्षः कः परितावद् उत्थितः कृच्छ्रात् उन्मील्य वै दृष्टिर् अचेष्टतं सहात्मना.
ततोरवाक् प्रतिलब्धाक् कः परेत्वद् उत्थितः कृच्छाद् उन्मील्य वैदृष्टिर् अच्छेद सहात्मनः.
ततोऽत्र वाक्प्रतिलाभदक्षा कापरे तवद् उत्थितः कृच्छ्रादुन्मील्य वैदृष्टिर् अचेष्टदं सहात्मना.
Anyone else?
Yeah. ततोर्वाक् प्रतिलब्धाक्षः कः परेतवाद् उत्थितः कृच्छाद् उन्मील्य वै दृष्टिर् असेश्चेदं सहात्मना.
Tataha. Then, arvak, externally, pratilabdha akshaha, having revived his consciousness, kaha, Lord Brahma, paretavat, just like a dead man, uttitaha, stood up, krichtrat, with great difficulty, unmilya, opening up, vai, indeed, drishtihi, his eyes, achashta, he saw, idam, this universe, saha atmana, along with himself. Translation. Lord Brahma's external consciousness then revived, and he stood up, just like a dead man coming back to life. Opening his eyes with great difficulty, he saw the universe along with himself. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. We actually do not die. At death, we are merely kept inert for some time, just as during sleep. At night, we sleep, and all our activities stop. But as soon as we arise, our memory immediately returns, and we think, oh, where am I? What do I have to do? This is called suptot tita nyaya, means the logic of someone awaking. Suppose we die. Die means that we become inert for some time, and then again begin our activities. This takes place life after life, according to our karma or activities, and svabhava, or nature by association. Now, in the human life, if we prepare ourselves by beginning the activity of our spiritual life, we return to our real life and attain perfection. Otherwise, according to karma, svabhava, prakriti, and so on, our varieties of life and activity continue, and so also do our birth and death. As explained by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Mayara vashe yachcha beshe kachcha habudubu bhai. My dear brothers, why are you being washed away by the waves of Maya? One should come to the spiritual platform, and then one's activities will be permanent. Krita punya punjaha. This stage is attained after one accumulates the results of pious activities for many, many lives. Janmakoti Sukritar na labhyate. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, Chapter 8, Text 70. The Krishna Consciousness movement wants to stop Koti Janma, the many lives, thousands of lives, repeated birth and death. In one birth, one should rectify everything and come to permanent life. This is Krishna Consciousness. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Text again. Lord Brahma's external consciousness then revived, and he stood up, just like a dead man coming back to life. Opening his eyes with great difficulty, he saw the universe along with himself. So the context here, of course, most of you have been following daily, but just a very quick context. Lord Brahma, he had realized that the boys he stole, and then there was this whole new set of boys that were there, and he saw the Vishnu Murtis, and then he became bewildered, and at one point he actually became blinded. He couldn't see anything anymore. And then Krishna removed that illusion from him. And now here he is waking up as if from death or from a very deep dream. And now he's seeing things as they are. He sees himself. He sees, he understands things as they are now. And so Srila Prabhupada in his purport takes this opportunity to talk about the meaning of life. This human form of life is very rare. And although generally, if we follow the grand scheme of things, if we follow our whims, we follow our desires, we rely on our karma and our janma, our birth, our activities, our tendencies like that, then we'll just continue going on birth after birth after birth, death after death after death, trying to enjoy in this material world. But Srila Prabhupada, he mentions, especially at the end of this purport, that the purpose of this Krishna consciousness movement that we all at least have access to, the purpose of that is, instead of going on and on and on and on with birth after birth after birth, to just in this one lifetime revive our original consciousness, wake up from this dream that is this material world, and return to our eternal spiritual position in the spiritual world, and engage in our eternal pastimes with Sri Krishna. The analogy we have here of a dream or of, waking from death, it's quite appropriate. When we're having a dream, generally we're very much immersed in it. We think that what's happening in the dream is actually happening. Of course, sometimes, like we mentioned several weeks ago, with Lord Balaram, he sort of understood that something strange was going on. He sees, the cows are running down from the top of Govardhan, and they're just in this intense state of ecstasy. They want to feed their calves, and they're not even the new calves. They're the calves, they've had another set of calves since then, and usually they're most affectionate to the youngest calves. But they're going down in their, the year-old calves, they're going down in there's milk is squirting out of their milk bags as they run down, and they're in this deep state of ecstasy. And then the cowherd men, the same thing's happening. They're running from the top. So sometimes in a dream, we notice that there's some strange things that that don't happen in reality. But generally, if we're in a deep dream state, we are identifying with that dream. And then, so let me look up this term again. I think it's supotitanyaya, the logic of someone waking up. So then what happens is, when we wake up, we we realize, oh, okay, no, that was a dream. And then we just think, sometimes we have to think, where am I and what do I have to do today? Like, so sometimes when I travel, for example, and I'm sleeping in an unfamiliar place, sometimes this will happen. There's a dream and then something will wake you up and you're not seeing the familiar reflections of light where they're usually coming from. And you have to think for a moment, okay, or you're hearing some sounds. You're thinking, okay, where am I? Oh yeah, that's right. So a few months ago when I was doing this class from Maine, this happened where there was a snowplow going down in the middle of the night and I heard this and I'm thinking, well, no, that's too close to the house because the roads are there. But here at my father's house, the road's further away. So you wouldn't hear it like that. I was like, wait, what is this? Where am I? Oh, that's right. I'm in Maine and I'm helping my brother. And it all comes back to you. This is the Supotita Nyaya, where everything starts. Oh, okay, I understand. And this is also what happens when we, awaken our spiritual lives. We realize that this thing that we're currently identifying with, our material situation, who we are, it's not reality. When we awaken to spiritual consciousness, we understand who we really are, what our eternal position is. And then all of this stuff, fades away. And this is what's being described here for, what Lord Brahma is going through. Now, we hear this a lot, how, we can experience that material life is temporary. It's illusory. We know that these bodies are temporary. We know that they're going to die. We can also have this, perception that we understand that we're eternal living beings. We're not the body. We're something that's beyond that. But we are in this situation. And even though we know that it's temporary and that it's going to end, we still act as if, no, this is us. This is, this body is me. If I get cut, I bleed, and, things like that. So we identify with it. And even though we know, in theory at least, we read Bhagavad Gita, and it explains how the soul is separate from the body. It's eternal, it's unborn, it's ever existing, it's primeval. It's not slain when the body is slain. It can't be cut to pieces by any weapon. It can't be moistened by water. Can't be burned by fire. Can't be withered by the wind. On and on we hear this and we understand it, and we can even experience it to different degrees. But still we act in this way. And one thing that happened to me early on in my devotional pursuit is, and it helped me sort of get a grip of what's actually going on with us, and why, even though we understand something in theory, we can't, really necessarily give it up, disconnect from it, is when I was first living in the Philadelphia temple, I was lucky enough to get this service where I would be the first one to wake up. I'd go down to the Pujari room, which was just behind the altar. This is where the old temple is. And I would make the sweet plate for Radha Sharad Bihari, Jagannath Baladev, Subhadra Devi, and Sri Sri Gaur Nitai. So there's 3 plates, and they each have pieces of burfi on them, sandesh, a little bowl of kheer, a little bowl of sweet rice. And then I would also make the arti trays. So put the ghee wicks into the ghee lamps, and then take the appropriate amount of incense, and then select a flower, and then a cloth like that, fill the water, make sure the Achman had the Ganges water that's sitting there by the sink, like that. So do that arrangement. And so it was a great service because, being up that early, there's, first of all, it's just a great service to do for the deities, but then also, you could start chanting your japa extra early. And then a little later, it was also my service to, for when it was time for everybody else to wake up, and I would walk down the hall blowing a conch shell and ringing a bell. And so anyway, somehow I was lucky enough to get the service when I was there. So one downside of having the service, now it's mostly upside because it's just such a great service, but one downside of the service is you could become tired. Our morning program is quite long. You have Mangal Arti, and then there's, the japa session, and then there's Srimad Bhagavatam class. And so it's, the greeting of the deities. So it's a fairly long morning program. So when you start extra early, then, sometimes, you can sort of get sleepy during part of it. So on one of the days, I had already finished my japa. It was still japa time, and there was a half hour before the next part of the program during japa time, which of course is a very important part of the day. One shouldn't nap during it. But I thought, well, okay, my japa is finished, and it's better to take a half hour nap now than to, fall asleep during Srimad Bhagavatam class. I don't want to have to, do this. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to go up to my room and I'm going to take a nap. So I went up and, get in my sleeping bag and set my alarm for 5 minutes before class was meant to start, and then, go to sleep. And so during this half hour nap, I had this very impactful dream, had a very deep impact on me for the rest of my life up until now, and I'm sure it will continue on. And in this dream, the goal of this dream, was that I had to make it through an obstacle course. And for those of you who don't know what an obstacle course is, it means you're somewhere, you can see that there's a goal somewhere else, and you have to make your way through these very difficult, challenging situations, obstacles, to get to where you want to go to. And, they're physically challenging, and they're, you have to come up with a plan. So it's a mental, physical, it's like this whole thing you have to do in order to make it through this obstacle course. And so this particular obstacle course for me was that, I'm like on top of this big cliff, and when you look down, you can't see the bottom. And then jetting up from, the abyss, because you can't even see, the ground, but coming up from the abyss, there are these pillars, not very wide, maybe about this wide or smaller, like from there to there. And so every once in a while there's these little pillars, and they're not the same height. Some of them are higher, some of them are lower, and they're spread apart quite far. And each of them has an old junk car pivoting on top of one of these. They're just, kind of like this, right? And so, so it sort of looks like a junkyard of cars that are just sort of like wavering around on these pivots. And so, I see where my goal is, and I say, okay, so I have to jump to these cars, but I have to be very careful because, they're on one pivot point. So, basically you want to get to, you got to get to the middle of the car as quickly as possible. If you stay on one side or the other, it'll pivot and you'll end up falling. And so first I came up with a mental plan. I look around, I look to the right, I look to the left, I look straight, and I see, okay, if I jump from this one to this one to this one to this one, that's my best path, because the other paths, they're a little too challenging. So, okay, got the plan, got it. And mind you, this whole time I knew where I was. I knew that I wasn't actually at this this junkyard obstacle course. I knew that I was taking a nap during japa time, and that I only had a half hour that I had to sleep. So I had this in my head. I wasn't completely under the dream, and I was identifying with it. I knew. So anyway, I start. So I jump out to the first car, get to the middle of it, and okay, wait until it balances again, and then, run out and jump, get to the next one. And I'm doing fairly well. I'm getting there, right? So there was one point where the next car that I had to jump to was a much further jump than I had previously done. And so I said, okay, well, all right, I got to get a faster start, and then I got to be really quick about it, because if I land on the hood of this car and I don't make my way to the middle of it where the pivot is, it's just going to fall. And so I know I got to do this. I got to do it quickly, and I got to do it as carefully as possible. So I got as much speed as I could, and I jumped. And just as I landed on the hood and went to take my step, my foot slipped, right? And so I'm falling down, and I quick grab the rim of the hood, like where the windshield wipers would be. And I grab that, but then the car just starts going like this. And my feet are out from under me now. I don't have any good footing. I'm just holding onto the hood, and so the car is like this, and so I'm starting to get nervous, right? But I'm not too nervous because I know, no, I'm at the temple in my room and I'm taking a nap, and it's not really a big deal. So anyway, the car is teetering like this, but I figure, okay, well, let's see if I can get out of this. So I start pulling myself up. And as I'm pulling myself up and trying to get my feet under me, the car slips a little bit. So it's here, and then all of a sudden it goes, and it slips down, and then it catches on something else, probably the exhaust pipe, like that. And so, shaking like this, and oh no, okay, I got to get up there. So very intense dream. So I'm pulling myself up, and this whole time, like I said, I know, okay, I'm just taking a nap. I know none of this is real. In 10 minutes or so, my alarm's going to go off, and I'm going to be going to Srimad Bhagavatam class. But I still wanted to see. I want to know, can I do this? Can I get out of this tough situation? Or, or is the car going to fall off of that pivot? And then, I'll find out how deep this pit is, because, I'm going to fall to my death, and then this car is going to land on top of me. It's a really intense dream. And even though I knew that it was a dream, I still wanted to know what happened, right? And so this is what it's like when we find spiritual life and we understand in theory, and even we can even perceive it to certain degrees, to certain extents. It's not just theoretical; it's also practical knowledge to varying degrees, depending on our level of understanding, like that. So even though we know these things, we still sort of want to find out what happens with our life. We're invested in the story, even though we know it's a complete illusion. We know it's a dream. We're still attached to find out, like, yeah, but how is it going to end? How am I going to do? Am I going to be able to climb up on this car at the last minute? And and if I do, am I going to be able to get to the next one? And will I get to that goal? We become invested. So this is why, for us engaging in spirituality, this is why it can seem very difficult to just dismiss this life as if it's just an insignificant dream, because we're attached to it. We're invested in the story. We want to know what happens, even though we know no, it's actually not reality. It's not truth. It's not happening. So that's that little bit left that we really need to conquer before we can make any true progress. This attachment to wanting to understand, we are still identifying with this dream that we're in. And until we detach ourselves from that, then we can't expect to make any substantial spiritual progress. And so our goal, as Srila Prabhupada mentions, is that just in this lifetime that we are to become perfect, to regain our eternal position, reawaken our spiritual knowledge. And it can't be done as long as we are attached to what's our material situations. And so this is what we have to learn from this, and what we have to wake up from, and what we have to leave behind. I like to also compare this phenomenon of, having one foot in the material world and one foot in the spiritual world, trying to do both things at once, because the spiritual process, the process of Krishna consciousness, it's actually quite simple. All we have to do is whatever we're already currently doing, we have to change our consciousness that I'm not doing this for me. I'm not doing this for my family. I'm not doing this for my society, country, etc. I'm doing this for the service of Krishna. That's the only thing that we're trying to do. We're changing our consciousness. We don't necessarily have to change our activities. We may find that the activities that we're doing are now unfavorable to devotional service. And then so we make some adjustments. But really the main adjustment we're trying to make is our consciousness. We're trying to let go of the concept that we are the enjoyers and the controllers of our lives. And we're trying to understand that Krishna is that supreme enjoyer, and that everything we do is not for ourselves or for, like I said, family, society, but it's actually for Krishna. So in that sense, it's a fairly simple thing, right? Then you're engaged in spirituality. Even though you're doing similar things, you're engaged in spirituality because your consciousness is there. The difficulty is, while we're trying to redirect that consciousness, we have what I would call a split consciousness. Sometimes we're focused on, okay, now I have to serve Krishna and everything I do is for Krishna. But then other times, especially when it's something that we feel that we have an expertise in, we want to sort of take the reins. We want to say, okay, no, I've done this before. I'm experienced in this matter. I'll take care of this one, And so we don't have that consciousness that's detached and that it's just for Krishna, and whatever the result is, that's up to him. We have this split where we think, okay, now this is my realm. I understand this well, and so I will do this, and the result will come. And when we have this split consciousness, it's like standing on a train platform, right? And holding on to, sometimes the train platforms, they have these signs that, tell you where the train's going. So it's like holding onto that pole. And then as the train is going by, grabbing onto that other pole that's, by the door where you, can grab on to get in, and holding on to both of those at the same time as the train's passing. It's not a pretty sight. It'll tear you in half, right? But this is what we're doing when we're trying to engage in spirituality. We're trying to grab it with all our might, but then we're also attached to the results of what we're doing. When we're trying to do those both at the same time, it tears us apart. And similarly, in our Krishna consciousness, when we are trying to fully revive that consciousness, to fully understand, to redirect that consciousness to Krishna. We're trying to do that, but at the same time, areas of our life, we're trying to, maintain that sense of control. Then it sort of tears us apart. And until we are able to grab spirituality with both hands and have no attachment whatsoever to the material, then we'll continue this dream, life after life, Koti Janma, as Srila Prabhupada and Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur were saying in the purport. So life after life, we'll just continue doing this as long as we have any bit of attachment, any bit of sense that I can control this situation. I've been here before. I'm expert. I can, I've done this so many times and the result is always positive. If we think that in any way, then, we think we're the controller. We think, we are in charge of the situation. So here we will stay in this material world. And as Srila Prabhupada said, this is the process of Krishna consciousness. We want to go from this self-centric consciousness to a God-centric consciousness, where everything we do, we just do for the service of Krishna wholeheartedly. And then we will wake up from this dream and everything will become clear to us, and all of this madness and suffering will be finished, over. So that's our goal. That's what we want to do. That's our process. That's Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada very appropriately named this International Society for Krishna Consciousness, because that's what we're meant to do. We're meant to become conscious of Krishna within everything. In other words, everything comes from Krishna. Everything's a direct expansion of him, as we learned in the prior weeks, where all the Vishnu Murtis were surrounded by all of these different, the opulences and the yoga siddhis and the 24 elements of material creation. They're all surrounding him. And so we can understand that everything comes from Krishna. Even us, we're part of him. And so becoming Krishna conscious is not only becoming aware that, okay, Krishna is the center and everything is revolving around him, but then utilizing everything in its proper, for its proper purpose, centered around him, including ourselves. So it's not just like I see this pencil and I say, okay, well, this pencil came from Krishna, so I should only write down, philosophical stuff. I shouldn't, or draw, pictures of Krishna or something that's going to help the Krishna conscious movement. I shouldn't think, okay, well, but now I just kind of want to draw something silly and, make something up out of my mind, and, a dinosaur with 3 horns and, but butterfly wings, and, it's whimsical. It doesn't make any sense. And then it's not using it for its direct purpose. But I don't want to just stop there with items. I have to also, with my own self, say, okay, well, since I'm also a part of Krishna, I'm always meant to be serving him. And so therefore, I have to only use me in the service of Krishna and not whimsically. And so it seems like it should just be an easy thing, like waking up from a dream. The alarm goes off, we wake up, and there we are, it's done. But sometimes, like I mentioned, we are very attached to that dream. We want to find out what's going to happen. We're very invested in the storyline and the characters, and we think it's something substantial when it's not. And this is what we are meant to overcome in the Krishna consciousness movement. So I will stop here to see if there are any questions, comments, additions, subtractions, challenges. And for once, I'm actually right on time for that. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Okay. Thank you,
So,
Sri.
yes.
Very deep and thought-provoking. I think you took it to another level, and a very good level, a very sobering level. Sometimes we just hear, just chant Hare Krishna, and it all kind of just like works itself out. Just chant, read, and just kind of trust the process. And I guess we have to do that. But throughout the process, we have to understand the goal isn't necessarily to just kind of have like a perfected material life and a perfected spiritual life, and they all kind of come together, and we're just happy in the kind of all our material endeavors as well. And sometimes we all come to Krishna consciousness with different backgrounds, different cultures, different religious backgrounds. Some are coming from a Hindu background, some are coming from a Jewish background, some are coming from a Christian background, Muslim background, Buddhist background, atheistic background. And all of these different ideas about what life is supposed to be like. And but to understand, at the end, really these attachments that we have, when we're holding on to this material world, plus we kind of want the spiritual world. The illustration you gave us of the train that's kind of going, but yet we're still holding on, we're going to get snapped in half. Eventually we have to make decisions of which life do we really want. It reminded me of a saying by Sachinandana Maharaj. He says that as long as we have mixed desires of wanting the material and wanting the spiritual, we'll only be chanting broken names. Like the names will be broken. They won't be, because we're still not completely sure what we want.
Yeah.
So wow, it was very profound, very thought-provoking. There was the last line in the purport. Srila Prabhupada said that, the goal is to have this all done, in one life. Something to that effect. Like, there are processes where you could, after many lives, the yoga process, or gradually through purification, you get promoted life after life into different bodies that will help. So why wouldn't a person, knowing Krishna consciousness can just take, can purify you in just one life? Why wouldn't a person want to do that? Why? I guess I can reflect and ask myself that question. Why not just completely surrender? But, it's such a simple, sublime, and it gives it'll take us to the highest place. You just kind of feel, why not? What's holding us back?
Yeah, that's the point, isn't it? And what's holding us back is, like I mentioned, we're invested in the story. We think that there's something that has substance here in this dream. We're not convinced that it's a dream. We know that it's a dream. We know that it's temporary, at least. We understand one day this body's going to die, and there's nothing that I can take with me. But yeah, we're attached. We're invested in the story. We want to see what happens in this illusion. And as long as we want to see what happens in this illusion, that's our desire. And so we're going to find out what happens in this illusion, and we'll also, if we keep up with this mentality, we'll keep seeing the sequel, but then he's going to, come to this next life where the situation's different, more favorable. Then will he be able to, like that. But as long as we think for a moment that any of our spiritual advancement is a result of some sort of activity that we've done, then we're in complete illusion. Spiritual growth is a result of Krishna's mercy. Now we have to be receptive of that mercy. That is a very important thing to also know. Like, for example, there's radio waves in the air all the time. You can't see them. And you might have a conversation with people like, hey, did you know that there are radio waves in the air, and there's all these different like songs and people talking, but you just can't hear it? And like, what are you, crazy? Come on now. Such a thing is ludicrous, right? But if you have a radio receiver and then you tune in, sure, you're still going to get some skeptics, and they're going to say, oh no, that's something else. You've put people in that box that are playing music or something, but the point is that the radio waves are always there, but until you actually tune in and receive it, then you're not going to actually be able to perceive it or get the benefit of those radio waves. So in a similar way, in Krishna consciousness, Krishna's mercy is always there. It's causeless mercy. It means you don't have to do anything. The mercy is there. It's always available. And the very only thing that we can do is become a proper receiver to that mercy and then grab onto it, right? But then we can't become proud of grabbing onto it or tuning in. It's just like it's such a small thing that we're using our free will to change our consciousness from, no, it's me doing it, to, no, it's Krishna doing it. That's the extent of what we can do. It's a very important thing to do, to make that switch in consciousness. But then more important is, after we make that switch, to completely be detached, because now it's in Krishna's hands. All I'm doing is holding on to Krishna's mercy, right? But what we tend to do in those situations is then, we start making some really substantial spiritual advancement, and then we start becoming proud, like, oh, hey, look, I've made some nice spiritual advancement. It must have been because of the blah, blah, blah I did, or the yada, yada, yada that I performed, or the, like that. So until we get rid of that pride, because it's that all it is the consciousness. Is it self-centric or God-centric? When it's God-centric, then Krishna's mercy is pulling us up. When it's self-centric, then we're relying on janma karma, like that, prakriti, all the things that were mentioned in the previous verses. So yeah, it should be an easy thing. It should be an easy decision, and it should be like, yeah, one life, no problem. Forget about one life, one moment. It's the easiest decision to make. Do I want to perpetually suffer in this material world, life after life, with just like little glints of happiness, which aren't even really happiness? They're just like temporary parts where the suffering is less, and so we kind of perceive it as happiness. Do we want to do that, or do we want to have our eternal life? Like, you ask the question, it seems ludicrous. Yeah, sure, why wouldn't I do that? But the point is that it's about the consciousness. So until I actually consciously become Krishna's servant, and that's it, without any attachment whatsoever, until that point, we don't go back to the spiritual world. So yeah, it sounds easy, and it seems like a no-brainer decision, but still, we're invested in this storyline. We want to know what happens. We think that we can do something that's substantial in life. And, this is where we all are. That's basically where we are. And until we kind of figure that out and just focus on the service of Krishna, then we'll keep doing this dance, this bhog tyag, and we'll make little advancement at a time. Does that answer your question completely, sufficiently?
Yeah, no, it's good. I think the more we hear about this, the more it drives home the point. So, yeah, thank you. Like I said, very, very profound and deep, thought-provoking class.
Thank you. You're too kind.
Anyone else?
I see that Humbly Yours has her hand raised.
Okay, go ahead, Renika.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you, Charachandra Prabhu. Yeah, thank you. You went from simple language to deep, like you touched upon the Survivor series. Looks like you watch a lot of Survivor, do you?
I don't actually. This was before Survivor existed when I had that dream. That was in 19...
Okay.
But,
because your narration reminded me of that TV show, and I said, oh, okay, fine. Like, you should be watching a lot of Survivor. So I'm glad it happened before pre-service. So probably, like, that was some kind of a premonition that there is a real obstacle. Like, yeah, thank you. So this German race car, the Formula 1 driver Michael Schumacher, like, he ended up in a ski accident, and he's currently brain dead, like in coma or vegetative state. So sleep means we know that most likely we are going to awake. But how do you explain the concept of coma, vegetative state, or the brain dead situation of some people, how they end up in hospitals and they lie in the hospital bed or probably at home care for years together? So where is their soul, and how does the Gita explain that particular situation, people going through that particular vegetative state?
So the Bhagavad Gita doesn't specifically address that particular issue, but we do know that the symptom of life is what the soul is. So when they're in a vegetative state, the soul is certainly there, but the material body is in a state where it is not outwardly animate. It's still, breathing and like that, and there's still brain functions happening, minor brain function, but the soul is there. It's a very, like, you can also compare that. Well, they even compare it to that state of life. They say that he's a vegetable, right? When someone's in that sort of state, and it's similar because there's also soul in plants like that, but they do very limited amount of things. So it's a vegetative state, they call it. And so, yeah, it's similar to that. It's similar to in the middle of your human life, you've done something where you've, by your karma, you've now come to a platform where within that human life, you have to go through this state of vegetativeness. And so sometimes people wake up from it and sometimes they don't, and they move on to the next life. But yeah, that's what that is. So the soul's still there.
Okay. Thank you. For me, like, I'm fairly new beginner compared to the rest of the people in this group. So for me, I look at all these morning Zoom classes as like, my moral science classes for the day, like, and hanging out with a bunch of, good principled people, ethical people. And when they share their experiences, you also gain from listening to other people's questions and the answers that you give to them. So it's not you're not just answering the other people's questions. The rest of the people also gain from that experience, and we enrich our knowledge, like and thoughts, like you fine tune your thoughts, and you fine tune your principles towards life and whatever happens during the day. So for me, I look at, like, what is a takeaway from me from this person's teaching, what is a takeaway for me for the class. So I'm still materialistic in that way. What can I take away, and how can I use what is being taught in today's class in my life, during the day, or when you interact with people, or when you deal with life in general. So thank you for the daily classes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. No, that's a good takeaway. We should, from these classes, try to figure out what we can do to get that change of consciousness, to do that redirection of consciousness.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. In spite of all this, I do make mistakes. I do make silly mistakes and stupid mistakes. I'm still not like a pure materialistic person. I do make mistakes all the time.
that's strange, because I don't make any mistakes at all. No, I'm just kidding. I make plenty of mistakes. We all do. That's not something that's unique to a newcomer. we tend to still make mistakes, but generally we do them in a slightly more educated way. The mistakes are different. Let's put it that way. And fewer and further between, hopefully. Looks like Vatsala Ashok Mataji has her hand up.
Thank you, Prabhu. Humble pranam. Glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much. I like your the word saying Janma-centric or Krishna-centric. Okay, so I think we have to feel Krishna's hand in everything, but sometimes we are off-balanced. I am an educated fool anyway. I can admit that. We thought we had in those days, I thought, I had some little knowledge, tiny bit of knowledge, and then you can do this. That's not true. After you retire, what are you going to do? The knowledge is full of junk. It's not helping to go through anything in life or moving me towards Krishna. Another thing is, because of this, you said we are holding on to the train-like situation, and the same thing I feel because of the COVID-19 vaccine. And I am reading so much about mRNA. mRNA is not a good deal. So if we are taking that, am I believing that this vaccination is going to help me, and not believing completely that Krishna is not going to protect me? And because there are a lot of dangerous things, they are explaining that they are putting a tracer in your system, protein ligand or something. It goes in and finds out, or it can transform or do something differently, to give messages, and the transcription process is different. So that means the COVID-19 vaccination, by taking it, we are not believing in Krishna, because I don't really fully believe that I should take the vaccine. So can you clarify a little bit on that? I don't know what you have been reading about COVID-19 vaccination.
Sure, I can comment on your question.
Thank you.
So I haven't done a lot of research on that vaccination. I know some devotees have. Generally, when we talk about anything, it doesn't matter what it is. Everything comes from Krishna. And it's the consciousness that we have to identify. It's not whether a thing is good or bad, or acceptable or unacceptable. It's our consciousness. So I have heard from some devotees who I can see that their consciousness is, I will take this because it will help me in my service to Krishna. And I see other devotees who, just like you mentioned, what is it? Rake Krishna, Mare Krishna, Rake. If Krishna wants to kill you, no one can save you. Krishna wants to save you, no one can kill you. So both of those consciousness are proper. Now the strange thing is, so it's not whether you're taking the vaccination or not taking the vaccination. It's your consciousness while taking or not taking. If your consciousness is, I will take it because I have faith that science is more powerful than spirituality, then that's not a good thing. And if you're not taking it because your reason to not take it is because you're more powerful than the disease, or whatever, then that's also not a good thing. So it's the consciousness that determines whether something is right or wrong. It's not the thing itself. So you definitely brought up some valid points. There are some questionable ingredients. Some of the things you brought up may or may not be true. We don't know. With like trackers and things like that, we don't know. But it could be true, could not be true. But the important thing to understand is not whether we're determining if something is right or wrong. Is we're determining if the consciousness is right or wrong. So with the right consciousness, you can either take or not take that vaccine, and still everything is going to be fine. And with the wrong consciousness, you can take or not take that vaccine, and everything will not be good for your spiritual growth. Now, I know that seems like a confusing answer, because generally in the material world, we just want to know if something is good, or we want to say, okay, here's this. I want to know if I should accept it or not. You tell me the answer, right? And we want a yes or no question. We want a yes or no answer. We want no, throw it away, or yes, accept it. But it's not that easy. It still is simple. It's all about the consciousness, and that's what today's class was all about. If our consciousness is pure, whether we take it or not, everything's okay. If our consciousness is impure, whether we take it or not, we're going to remain in this material world birth after birth. So that may not have been the answer that you wanted, but that's the answer that's given in Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. And I hope it's satisfactory for you.
Prabhu, can I add something? Because I'm thinking along the line of, if I do completely believe in Krishna, and whether I die or live, it is up to him. Okay, why am I depending on a substance to make me, it may give adverse effects in my system. Why do I have to depend on somebody, because they said they haven't even tested to thousands and millions of people. They just emergency approval was given to the vaccine. So they think it may help you, and a lot of adverse effect may go on with your system. It is a new thing that goes on. And why I for myself, what I am thinking is, if I believe in Krishna, if I die or live, it is up to him. I mean, whatever you have done your duties, whatever you think, according to your parents or according to the normal thing, woman or something we are supposed to do, we have done it. And we do believe in Krishna. Maybe it is not like a topmost devotee. It is some kind of in between. We have not completely surrendered. We may think we have, but we have not. We still have remaining bit of desires or something that goes on to live. So if I believe in Krishna, don't you think Krishna is going to protect you completely? Why am I having this vacillation? I shouldn't be vacillating whether this is going to, because I am avoiding Krishna and I am thinking that this medicine is going to be effective. Why? How can I think like that? If I do believe in Krishna, let him take over, let him do whatever it is. If I die or live, it is up to him.
Okay, that's a good point. And so if that is your consciousness, then you definitely don't take it. But we also have to understand that since everything comes from Krishna, it's also, Krishna actually made the vaccine too. Now, I'm not saying that that's a good thing. He made everything. He made, murder weapons and atomic bombs and things like that. He made everything. So I'm not saying it's a good thing, and I'm certainly not saying that everyone should take it or that everyone should not take it. What I'm driving at here is, if that's what your understanding is, that if Krishna wants to save you, then no vaccine, can kill you, and if Krishna wants to kill you, then no vaccine can save you, then whether you're taking it or not, it doesn't matter, because it's in Krishna's hands. So what does matter is your consciousness, right? So if your consciousness is, I shouldn't take it because Krishna is in control, then good, don't take it. Krishna is in control. And if your consciousness is, I'm going to take it because Krishna is in control and this is how he's controlling the situation, okay, then take it, because Krishna is in control. So if there is a poison in the vaccine, but a devotee is taking it with the consciousness that Krishna is providing this vaccine and I'm doing this in his service, then the poison won't affect the devotee. I mean, it can affect you anyway because you're spirit soul. So if the body dies, it dies. It doesn't matter. What's gonna benefit you is that you made a decision that was based strictly on your faith in Krishna, either way. So whether you're taking it or not, then you have benefit. I hope that's clear. And I understand that this is literally what this class was about. We're talking about understanding that Krishna is in control, but that can mean two different things to two different people, and especially in this situation. And that's the beauty of it, is that it's the consciousness, the sincere consciousness, not the this is how I'm going to justify my decision, but it's really not that. I'm talking about if you have actual Krishna consciousness, then whether you're going to take the vaccine or not, if you're basing it on Krishna consciousness, that you're doing whatever you're doing to serve Krishna, not serving yourself, not just justifying how you see the world, then whatever the case may be, it's beneficial, the consciousness. That's what it all comes down to. So no matter what we're talking about, whether we're talking about a vaccine or an automobile or food or whatever the case may be, I mean, we can say, I have faith that Krishna will sustain my life. I don't have to eat anymore. And there are some sages that do that. And they live for a very long time because they do have that faith. And Krishna maintains them for as long as they need to be in this material world and do their preaching engagement. But not everybody has that depth of faith. And some people understand, well, but Krishna gave us food, so why not eat it? And so whatever the consciousness is, that's what's important. It's not whether we're eating or not eating, or taking a vaccination or not taking it. So there's not an official position on whether devotees should or should not take a vaccination, and there can't be, because it's all about the consciousness. So yeah, if you're of that mind that Krishna wants to save you, no one can kill you, and etc., that term actually supports both sides. So it's about the consciousness. Whatever you're gonna do, whatever decision you make, if Krishna wants to kill you, no one can save you, and if Krishna wants to save you, then no one can kill you. That's the simple answer. And I know that sounds confusing, because it sounds like I'm just trying to not answer your question, but I am very directly.
No, this is the way it is. I think two sides to the coin.
Okay, good.
Anyway.
Good. It can be. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And then, yes, it looks like Krishna Kirtan Prabhu also has his hand up.
Sorry.
We will have to end at 9 o'clock. There's going to be another class beginning at that time.
Thank you.
We
have 4 minutes.
Time.
Krishna Kirtan.
Hey, thank you so much, Charichandra Prabhu. Very nice. This is very complicated conversation, but it's very mature explanation. And also very happy to hear Mother Vatsala's deep conviction that Krishna is under control. And one thing reminded me of Sanatana Goswami. The further understanding we learned from Gaudiya Vaishnavas. That's very liberated consciousness. But in pure devotional service consciousness, I see the example of Sanatana Goswami. When his body was completely contaminated, and he found himself, I feel like he find himself disgusted, cannot utilize in Krishna's service.
Yes.
He made his own decision that I want to give up my body. It's no use. But when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu understood his mindset, he said, you don't have your right.
Mm-hmm.
This body belongs to me.
Yeah.
So, as you mentioned, yes, we devotees, we have to, we understand that this body belongs to Krishna's property, spiritual master Prabhupada's property. And somehow or other utilize 100% in his, lot of, we are not done. We may be liberated for ourselves, but our perfection will come when we share that love realizations to give others, to become an instrument of Prabhupada's mission and Lord Chaitanya's mission. It means we have a lot to do. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Sanatana Goswami, his body belongs to me. It means our body also belongs to him. Our body also belongs to Prabhupada.
Yeah.
So my understanding that is good conviction, and it's good that we utilize, save our body, protect our body, and utilize as much as Krishna sanctions in service to Srila Prabhupada. A lot of people need Krishna consciousness. So, and also in ISKCON, I sent some communication, they compiled pros and cons, good and bad, everything about the COVID and vaccine. That might help to make our own decision as well. Just wanted to share. Thank you.
Okay. Those, very quickly before the Bengali class has to start, those who may not be familiar with the story that Prabhu was just talking about, Sanatana Goswami. So, Sanatana Goswami was instructed by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Varanasi, and he was asked to write the Hari Bhakti Vilas, which is the guidebook for the Vaishnavas for etiquette and different ways of worship and like that. And after those instructions, Sanatana Goswami went to go visit the Lord in Jagannath Puri, and he went through Jarikhanda forest, where he drank some questionable water, and his body became all diseased, and there were sores and there was pus coming out, and he thought, okay, well, this body is no longer suitable for the service of Krishna, so I'll just leave this body and then I'll accept another one, and then I'll serve Krishna better in that body. So his idea was, when he got to Jagannath Puri, was that he was going to throw his body underneath Lord Jagannath's Rath cart, and so his consciousness, yeah, it was okay. The way he was going to do it, suicide's not great, but the way he was going to do it, it was, notice, it was understandable. The body it was detrimental in its service. And when Lord Chaitanya saw him, he was embracing him, and then he felt bad because the oozing sores from his body were getting on Lord Chaitanya. And so he thought it was offensive. So his consciousness was okay. But Lord Chaitanya said, no, you're not allowed. You have things to do. You have service to do. And then, of course, Lord Chaitanya took away the sores on his body, and he took away the detriment to his service. But that was a very good point. Thank you, Krishna Kirtan. And it seems that we are now completely out of time.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Very nice class. Thank you.
All right, Krishna.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Nice
Thank you,
answer.
Charachandra Prabhu. Very, very, very nice, thought-provoking, as I mentioned.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for a wonderful session.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Prabhu.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Everyone have a wonderful day. See you back here tomorrow.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Have a good day. Thank you.